Good morning. This is Tracy, Hales Vass, right on Four Corners. Today, I'll be talking with Sabra Brown Steinsiek, romance writer of the Taylor's Girls series. Good morning, Sabra.
Good morning, Tracy. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I had a great time binge reading your love series, the Taylor's Girls series, all 5 of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed them.
Oh, I did. They were very readable and moved really quickly, and it was easy to do a marathon read of them. After each one finished, I wanted quickly to read the next to see what happened.
Thank you.
It's a family here that becomes very real.
Yeah, when I started the book, the first book, I didn't know it was going to be a series.
Oh, how
In fact,
fun.
at that point, I didn't know it was going to be a book. I was writing online with friends, and, these stories where you leave a hanging end and somebody else finishes the next piece.
Oh, yeah.
And one day I started writing, timing is everything, and I kept waiting for where I was going to hand it off, but it didn't happen. And I suddenly realized I was writing a book.
Wow.
And so I finished it up, and in the first edition, it had a epilogue, and I thought, that's it. About a month later, while I was in the shower, they showed back up and said, we have more to tell you.
There's more to this story.
And the next thing I knew, there were 5 of them.
Wow. That's really exciting. Why don't you give our listeners a little synopsis of the Time series? I'm calling them the Time series. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay.
It starts off with a Albuquerque reporter who is assigned to do a piece on a Broadway singer who's in town in Albuquerque to do a concert. And she hates this because she's a serious reporter and she considers it fluff. But when she meets him, that spark is there. And the first book takes care of their love story. And then it covers 25 years of their lives. Parents, grandparents, daughters, husbands, everybody I could think of ended up in this.
Yeah, well, you have 4 generations.
I do.
Well, Taylor is one of the protagonists, very handsome guy.
Very.
Yes. Well, they're all pretty. They're all quite beautiful.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Just happen to be one of those beautiful families.
That's right. That's okay.
But I'll let you in on a secret. Taylor Morgan was based on Michael Crawford, the original Phantom of the Opera.
Oh.
Because I was actually a member of his fan club when I was writing this.
Is that right?
For anyone who has heard Michael speak, there are lots of little Easter eggs through the book that refer back to things that he's talked about.
Oh. Well, I know the reference in there to the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, it's my favorite musical.
Well, that's great. So, why did you choose to write romance novels?
Tell you the truth, romance novels chose me. I would never in a million years have expected to write romance novels. I'm basically a practical Capricorn, and I've never, up until that point, I'd only read Nora Roberts for romance.
Oh.
And so when I realized I was writing romance, it was a big shock to me, too.
But you had fun with these, didn't you?
I did. They became very much a part of my life. There is a section in timing is everything.
Mm-hmm.
That to this day, I cry when I read it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still trying to figure out how not to have that section in there. It's very sad, but it's very necessary.
It is. I have an idea what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
because I was moved to tears also. But it was done really well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So have you written anything other than the romance novels?
I've written a children's book called The Tale of the Pronghorn Cantaloupe, and I have another children's book ready to go that's called Biscochitos. And I also wrote a history of the Lodge Hotel down in Cloudcroft. They were celebrating their 100th anniversary, and they asked me to write a history for them. And so that was a change for me.
Mm-hmm.
When you're writing contemporary romances, there's not a lot of research that goes on.
Right.
But if you're writing the history of a 100-year-old hotel, there's a lot of research.
Oh, yeah. Quite a different ball game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, but a lot of work.
So you say there wasn't a lot of research. Does that mean that you have spent time in New York City where much of the novels take place?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I just, whenever I had them going somewhere, I would go in online and figure out what restaurant, what location, and chose real places.
Oh, that's great.
And so it was, a lot of it was just very basic research.
But you did capture, in the New York sections, you did capture the hustle and bustle of the big city.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to.
You did. I have been there and spent time there in New York City and felt that same madhouse that is there. So what is next in store for... Is there more for the Taylor's girls?
No.
Okay.
When I finished A Time for Love, they told me that was it. And people have asked me to go back and write the grandparents' story, but they don't seem inclined to tell me their story.
Maybe at some point they will, but you have to wait.
Maybe they will, but at the moment, the story is complete.
Great.
Right now, I'm working on a dual ghost story,
Oh.
dual romance with a ghost story set in Venice, Italy.
Well, that's
Now,
exciting.
Venice, I did research personally. My husband sent me to Venice 3 years ago with my sister, and it was a research trip, although we had a lot of fun.
Well, that makes sense, yes.
And I'm head over heels in love with Venice.
Oh, how exciting.
Set there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a story of an English lawyer who inherits a palazzo in Venice
Mm-hmm.
in modern times, and an Albuquerque librarian who is a friend of his cousin's that he chooses to help him catalog the books in the palazzo. And as they're going through it, they find out that the palazzo is haunted. And so that's the second story in the book, is the story of my ghosts, a Renaissance couple.
And you said you had a little bit you could read to us from that?
Yes, I do.
Great.
This takes place when Teresa, who's known as Tree,
Mm-hmm.
gets to Venice to start the job. Venice. Tree stood in the water taxi watching as they motored from the airport. She had been here once before with Jenny. She'd always wanted to come back, and now it was finally happening. As the water taxi coasted to a slower speed, she saw the iconic church of Santa Maria della Salute on her left as they came into the Canale Grande. All around them were water vehicles of every type. They were in a motoscafo, The Vaporetto water bus made its ponderous way along the edges of the canale, and single-stop gondolas, the Torettos, with their standing passengers, dodged the traffic from one side of the canal to the other. And everywhere there were gondolas, most packed with tourists, some with a singing gondolier that almost seemed to clog the waterway. It was crazy, with seemingly no traffic laws to impede any of them. It was indeed grand and glorious, and she laughed out loud from the joy of being back. They finally turned into one of the docks that lined the canal and came to a stop. The driver lifted her luggage to the dock, then held her hands as she left the bobbing boat. Mark paid him, then joined her. We're on the Calle del Doce in the Cesare San Marco, Mark explained as they started down the narrow street. We're between the Ponte Accademia and Piazza San Marco, so the house is very easy to find and get to. If you get lost, you can always start over from one of those places. I remember, she said, the Accademia Bridge is a landmark, and there are arrows on the sides of buildings that keep you pointed toward it. Same with St. Mark's Square. Is the house on the Grand Canal? I admire your ability to switch back and forth between English and Italian. I had to memorize that little speech to get it right. I was just showing off, but you were at home in either language. Mark turned left, then left again at the next street, back facing the canal. Here we are, Cadanote, which is indeed on the Grand Canal. Mark opened the modern lock on the ancient door and stood aside so Tree could go in first. He knew what was waiting and wanted to see her reaction. She stepped inside and stopped cold as she saw the beautiful tiled entry that ran from the street to the canal. Columns were placed throughout for the support of the rest of the house, and a marble staircase wound up one corner to the floor above. The mosaics on the floor were intricate, and what had once been a canal entrance at the front of the building was a wall of windows filling in the spaces that had once been used for water deliveries and transportation. Wow, Tree whispered before turning to Mark. Is the whole house in as good a condition as this? Come and see, he said.
So do you speak Italian then?
No, I don't. So I wouldn't guarantee those pronunciations.
Okay,
but
that's okay.
Before we went to Venice, I did study some Italian to at least get the cadence and.
Plus, you were there, so you got to hear it. And
oh yeah,
yeah. Oh, exciting!
And it's just a magical place. And we stayed in a hotel that overlooked the Grand Canal, and we had the top floor, a little bitty room that overlooked the canal. And every night, about 8 o'clock, a gondola would come by down on the canal, and the guy who was in the gondola would sing Volare.
Oh, how romantic.
To this day, my sister and I laugh every time we hear the song Volare.
Oh, yes. Oh,
because we could almost set our watches by him.
Oh, when can we expect this book to be published?
I'm hoping that sometime in 2019.
Great.
It's about 2/3 written.
Okay.
And we're working on it with my publisher, Artemisia Press, Jeff Haberger.
Yes.
And we really hope to have it out maybe in time for Halloween.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Tell me a little bit about your writing process. Have you always been a writer?
I have. Pretty much since I was in grade school. I remember, I think in 5th grade, putting together a book of stories about about Roman mythology. And I edited it and printed it out, and it went into the library.
Oh, exciting.
And that was kind of where the bug hit me. And then in high school, I wrote stories with friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we had fun with that. Then life kind of got in the way. Married a minister, so we had a church to take care of,
Yes.
and had a son, so I had to help him through school. So it wasn't until he was about 14 that I went back to writing. And my writing process is really on the days that my characters are willing to play, then I can write.
I understand
If they don't want to talk to me,
Mm-hmm.
I can sit here and stare at the screen and not get a word down. I'm not one of those disciplined writers who writes from 10 to 12 every day. But there are days that I will write a full 8 hours if everything's going the way it should.
Well, that just shows how they come across as such real people, because it sounds like to you they are real people.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely real.
Isn't it?
I know exactly what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
I know how they would behave. There's a recurring theme that goes through all 5 books that is about all the girls in the family,
Uh-huh.
which is one of the reasons it's called Taylor's Girls.
Right.
And her grandfather Laura's grandfather is determined that there's going to be a boy eventually.
Right.
So
They keep hoping.
and they keep hoping. So it's kind of a running story that goes through all 5 books. They are very, very real to me.
Well, they became real to me. I enjoyed them very much. I felt part of that family. And when they'd have the family get-togethers, it was great.
Yeah. Well, I can remember family get-togethers when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We had cousins that were about our age.
Oh.
And there were 5 of us and 3 of them. And we had Thanksgiving together every year.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into some interesting stuff.
One thing I really liked about the Taylor's Girls series is the mixed families. I don't want to give too much away, but I liked that there was diversity going on there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the fact that not everybody was from the same background.
But they all accepted each other and loved each other.
There's an adoption at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not from an expected place. So they are a pretty diverse bunch.
Yes, I enjoyed that part. Yeah, you were talking when we first started about an online story that each person added to. Tell me more about that.
We would write what would become the seed of this series. We would write stories about a main character and his 4 women friends. And the point was to write until you had it at a stopping place for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next person would have to pick up the story from there. And actually, the Mezzanotte, the new book,
Mm-hmm.
was really a short story that we wrote together. And everybody, I knew what was going to happen, and they weren't writing fast enough to suit me. So I took it over and told them I was going to finish it, and the response was good.
It's your story. Well, I look forward to reading that
changed
one.
a lot from the beginning, but it started there.
So do you still write with this group?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of lost touch, actually.
That happens. But it seems like it was a great avenue at one time.
It was. And it was a lot of fun.
That's great. So do you have another writing group that you work with?
No, I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I found that I really work best on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have good friends who will read it and tell me the truth.
Good.
and tell me what's wrong with it.
Good.
And my publisher is really good about finding things.
Great.
I had thought I was done with A Time for Love, and I'd sent it to him. I said, here it is. It's done. He sent me back 168 changes,
Oh,
including he wanted 2 more chapters.
oh wow. Okay.
He got 1.
That sounds like a compromise.
Yeah. So I just, I've been very active in writing groups, and I'm a member of Lyra, the Land of Enchantment romance authors. But for the most part, I write pretty much by myself.
Everybody writes in their own way, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And you have to find that way that works. So, other than this, what's the title of the next book set in Vienna?
Mezzanotte.
Okay.
It means midnight.
And other than that, are you working on anything else?
No, I'm really not right now. Usually when I'm working, I'm consumed by the piece I'm working on.
That's good.
It kind of pushes everything else out of the way.
Well, you become so immersed in your characters that I can understand that.
Yeah, they are kind of complex.
Yes, I'm still, the Taylor's family will live with me for quite a while.
Well, that's what I hoped would happen.
Yeah, and you write really well. Good pacing, great descriptions. Like I said, I enjoyed them very much. I was very impressed with that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 books have won the New Mexico Book Award for Best Romance for the year they were entered.
Each one individually won, huh?
Yes, they were entered in different years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of that.
So do you find yourself going to writers' conferences?
No, not really. I've been to a few, and a lot of it is I'm really very shy.
Oh, I understand that.
And so going to some place where I don't know anybody is usually pretty hard for me.
But you stay home with your characters in your books, and that's the company you need.
Yeah, my goal at one time was to become a reclusive writer living on Catalina Island.
Oh, I like that. I could do that.
It's another beautiful place.
It is. I have been there, and I love it. Is there anything else you'd like to read for us? We have some more time.
I can read you part of one of my children's books, if that's okay.
I would love that.
It's called The Tale of the Pronghorned Cantaloupe.
Okay.
And it is written for ages 8 and up, although I have bands as young as 2.
Okay.
And it's a bilingual book.
Good.
Which I thought was very important.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, but luckily I have people who do, who translated it for me. And I had a wonderful illustrator named Noelle Chilton, and I've been very lucky. She has illustrated my new children's book, Biscochitos, which will probably be out about Christmas.
Well, that's perfect.
But this is the tale of the pronghorn cantaloupe.
Okay.
My daddy grew up on a farm in New Mexico. He said it was a rough area where not much grew except snow and snakes. He often told me about walking to school, and the funny thing was, every time he told it, the road would be longer and the snow deeper than the time before. He also told me about the time he brought a snake home, and his mother told him he had to choose her or the snake. But that's a story for another day. My favorite of his stories was about fall roundup of the wild pronghorn cantaloupe. Now, these looked a lot like the cantaloupes you see at the grocery store, except they had sharp, double-pronged horns growing out where the stem would be and rolled across the plains in herds. They would use those horns to steer with, dipping down on one side or the other, depending on the direction they wanted to go. Some of them grew to be as big as basketballs. Folks believed they were the meanest things alive. Dad's best friend was his dog, Andy. Even though Andy was a dachshund, that dog fancied himself to be a great hunting dog, fearless and invincible. The two of them were always together, except when Dad had to go to school. Andy would wait for him on the front porch, dreaming big dreams for such a little dog. Dad told me about the time when they were out hunting rabbits, and Andy stumbled on a nest of the pronghorns. Those cantaloupes rolled around that dog and just out of pure meanness began to close in on him with those wicked horns sharp and ready to rip. And I'll let you read the book to find out the rest of it.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
That one came about by accident, too.
Oh, really?
I had a friend who worked when they were getting ready to open the WHIP project in Carlsbad, which is where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
He was assigned to do a environmental study on the effect on the pronghorn antelope in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And he did his report, sent it off, and then discovered that his spell check knew the word cantaloupe, too. And he had typed cantaloupe, and his big fancy report went out about the pronghorn cantaloupe. I nearly died laughing.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
And I wrote the story that day.
Uh-huh.
It took 7 years to get around to getting it published.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm kind of fond of it.
Oh, yeah. I'll have to check that out, definitely.
And it's full of puns, too. I have to have something so that the grown-up reading
exactly
is going to enjoy it, too.
I love that when it happens. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sabra, we're just about out of time.
No, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I hope everybody goes out and reads the books.
Yes, where can they find them? Do you have a website?
You can find me on Amazon.com.
Okay, great. And that's the Taylor's Girls series.
If you just put in Taylor's Girls or my name, it will bring you up everything. And at the bottom of it, there should be a link to my Amazon site.
We'll certainly look for that. And it's been a real pleasure reading your work and talking with you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And that was Sabra Brown Steinsiek talking about the Taylor's Girls series and other works that she has. This is Tracy Halesvass, right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM in Farmington, New Mexico. Thank you for listening.